Welcome back to Neuroconversant Leadership, where we explore how to improve communication with all types of people, people who are not necessarily quite like you. I'm Jeremy Doran. I help give people the tools they need to make the transition from being excellent contributors into being excellent managers and leaders. Whether we realize it or not, we are all in sales. And I have to admit that I don't tend to like salespeople. So I think I may have an issue that needs to be resolved. In last week's episode, Dagna Bieda talked about the need to self-market in the workplace, and it's especially challenging for engineers and other technical people, largely because they think that their work ought to be able to speak for itself. And I remember I was in my 20s at a large corporation, and it suddenly dawned on me that promoting myself and letting people know my worth was a fair amount of my actual job, and it felt terrible. I didn't like it. It seemed wrong. I assumed that my boss would do that for me. Isn't that what they should be doing, helping me? But for one reason or another, that wasn't happening. And I realized that I had to take it on myself. And it was a challenge. I didn't really like it. It seems like bragging. And if you think talking about yourself and your accomplishments is bragging, you kind of have to get over it. And you don't have to brag. You don't have to say things like, look at how awesome I am. You can do it in a better way. Instead, maybe you can show you're excited or even a little surprised. Excited and surprised about your accomplishment always makes you look very genuine. Oh, wow, you will never guess what I just did. I'm really excited about this. And then go on to explain it. People will be excited alongside you. Or maybe you're just giving a status update like, hey, everyone, I know this project is going to affect you down the road, so I wanted to give you an update on what just got done. And then you can talk about the win that you just had. And notice that I said, hey, everyone. As mentioned earlier, you can't just rely on your boss to help promote you. Sometimes they're just too busy. Sometimes they're a little worried that you may get promoted and leave their department, and all of a sudden they've lost a really good worker. They may be taking a little bit of the credit for what the team has accomplished, which is what you have accomplished, and they're not so concerned about making sure people know you're the one who did it. And that may be conscious or it may just be unconscious. There are a lot of different reasons, but you need to include other people. If you're doing it on an email and you're letting people in other departments know or people higher up, you can just carbon copy them. And that way it's clear that they don't need to respond, or you can even put it right in that email. This is a status update. There's no need to respond. I just want to let you know. The other thing, if your boss isn't going to be the one to help promote you, get a champion somewhere else. Do you have a mentor at work or a friend who happens to be higher up in the organization? Let them know about something that you accomplished and then ask them who they think ought to know about it. And maybe could they help share with that person? Having a champion goes a long, long way. That way you don't need to brag about yourself. You get someone else bragging about you. Now, those are when you are trying to self-promote or self-market yourself in the company, which is sales, but it's selling yourself. What happens when you actually get into sales? What if you leave a big company and go to a smaller company where you have more responsibilities, one of which is getting more customers in the door? Or what if you start your own business, or for whatever reason, you are now in a sales role? Sales is your job. Now, when you're in sales, there are a lot of important skills that people will talk about. You need to be able to ask good questions. You need to be able to actively listen. You need good product knowledge. You need to be professional. You need to present yourself well. You need to be able to solve problems. The number one skill for successful sales is asking for the sale. It seems so obvious, but an astounding number of people never actually ask for the sale. And why don't they do it? Going back to what we said about self-marketing, it seems self-evident. My product should speak for itself, or my service should speak for itself. I just told you all of the reasons to buy. So if you want to buy, you will. You'll ask me. Nope, that's not the way it works. You can give everybody all of the information about why they should buy your product. If you don't ask for it, don't ask for that sale, they're probably not going to buy. And quite frankly, I think that's partly an excuse, the fact that it seems self-evident. It's an excuse because you don't want to seem too pushy. The number one reason why we don't like salespeople is because we've had experience with salespeople who are pushy. People talk about the used car salesman. For me, it's furniture salesman. They're very pushy. I don't care for it, and I don't want to be like them. So the word sales and salesperson just has a bad connotation. We also don't want to seem needy. You don't want to seem like you're asking for help. Asking for a sale can seem like I'm asking for something that benefits me, which is tantamount to asking for help. I don't like asking for help. I one time moved a couch by myself. It took me about 15 minutes. If I'd asked someone for help, it would have taken us 30 seconds, but I didn't want to. I've gotten a little better at it, but I still don't like asking for help. And sometimes asking for a sale can seem like you're asking for help, but you're not. The big one is fear of rejection. So let's go into all of those. If you don't want to feel pushy or needy, you have to change your mindset. Do you believe in your product? Do you believe in your service? Is it at a fair price? And would that person benefit? If all of those things are true, then you can change your mindset and the wording from selling a product or service to helping them find the right solution to fit their needs. If you believe in your product and service, that's really what you're doing. You're helping people find a solution to a need or a problem. The other thing you can do is don't let your own gain be the consideration. Focus on their needs. Are you solving a problem for them? If you would be solving a problem for them, don't be selfish. If you let your insecurities prevent you from asking them for the sale, you're effectively being selfish by not encouraging them to get the product or service they need to help achieve their goals or overcome their problems. So overcome your own insecurities and help the other person. Talked about fear of rejection. It's so common and it makes so much sense. We are all very social creatures, even those of us who tend towards introversion, like myself. We still want to fit in. We still want to belong. We still want to feel like we're valuable and we contribute. And being rejected can just make us feel down and worthless, and it's no fun. One thing you have to remember is that a no is not rejecting you. It's rejecting the product or service. They're not condemning you as worthless if they don't buy. The product might just not fit their needs, or it might not fit their budget. There are a million reasons why they may not buy, but you being worthless isn't one of them. So you need to get over the fear of rejection. There's two things I did that helped me with that. The first one is to push for no. People don't ask for the sale because they don't want to hear no. For some reason, they would rather have the no be implied. And if it was never actually stated, then there's a tiny dash of hope. But what a waste of time and energy having it in the back of your mind that maybe they're going to come around and buy. So I'm going to keep it using up a little bit of my brain space, a little bit of my energy space. Instead, just push for no. If you get a no, then you can move on. You can drop them. It's like when you have a to-do list, the best thing on a to-do list is putting a check mark that you got it done. The second best thing is deciding you're not going to do a thing and crossing it off. Almost feels as good. That's what a no can do for you as well. It gets it off of your to-do list. You've taken it away. The other thing you can do is think about statistics. Let's say in your industry, for every 20 no's, you get one yes. So now what's the goal? The goal is to get 20 no's, because you know if you get 20 no's, a yes is going to pop up. So push for those 20 no's and think about getting those no's as part of the goal, and then you're achieving your goal. Another thing that I did was I changed what it means to get a win. Originally, getting a sale was what I called a win. And when I changed my mindset to getting the prospect a solution that is good for them, a win, then all of a sudden, if they went with a competitor of mine, but I know it's a good competitor, then great. They got a good solution. I can count that as a win. If they already have a solution and just don't need mine, great. They have a solution. I can count that as a win. Making that mind shift changed helped me to be okay with someone not going with me because at least they have a good solution. Now, what if we're not hardcore selling, but we're networking? A lot of entrepreneurs do networking, and you go to events like chamber events or BNI or any other networking event. And one thing that they talk about is not promoting yourself to the person you're speaking with, instead asking who they know who might need your help. It makes sense because then you're getting someone else to be your champion, which I talked about earlier, but you're missing the opportunity that's right in front of you. Think about what happens if you get someone to give you a referral. They may know someone else who needs your product or service, and then they need to take the step to reach out to that person, which they may or may not do because everyone's busy. That person may or may not recognize that they do have this need, and they may or may not have time. If they finally do come to you, then you get to start the process of explaining your value, which is what you had already been doing with the person who is right in front of you before going through all those steps. So why not just see if the person you're talking to, in addition to knowing anyone else who needs your service or product, maybe they need it themselves. And you don't need to be pushy. You don't need to be needy. It's not pushy if you just ask a question. Hey, is this something that would help you or help your company? And if they say yes, then should we set up a time to dig into this and examine it some more? Those aren't pushy. Those are just finding out. If there's a way that this can help you, then let's move forward with the conversation. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be pushy about it, but don't be afraid to ask. Practice and process make everything better. Everything gets easier with repetition. Asking for sales gets easier as well. The more you do it, the smoother it is, the less you hesitate. If you lean back every time you ask for a sale, then people can tell you're hesitant, and that doesn't give a lot of confidence. So just lean into it, do it, get smoother, and the smoother it is, the more likely you're actually going to get a yes. Another thing about process is having steps to follow is incredibly helpful. If you have a process, let's say there are 6 steps, and you follow all 5 steps, and the last step is asking for the sale. If you've been following your steps, you're going to follow that one too. So make it a process. And I always recommend checking in early and often. You've heard salespeople who kind of take this over the top, in my humble opinion. If I could deliver this, would you buy it? What would it take to get you into this car today? I don't recommend those things, but use something that you're comfortable with. You don't need to be salesy, but check in early. Hey, does this make sense? Is this something that's of interest? Is this something that your company needs? And then if the answer is yes or no, then you can kind of shift the conversation towards what they need more. Maybe you have a solution for it, maybe you don't. But checking in early makes it easier to be able to then ask the final question at the end. Another great thing about a process is you can write it down. Make an agenda. You can even hand them the agenda. The agenda will be, we're going to spend so much time on this, this, and have the last item on the agenda be to determine next steps. And the next steps, you might even list what the options are. The next steps are going to be fulfill a PO, agree to move on, or there's going to be research. So basically, yes, no, or we need to do some additional work. Whatever it is, if you put that on the agenda and you hand it to them and tell them right in the beginning, here are all the things we're going to talk about. One of them is whether or not you're going to buy this product. It takes the pressure off. And when you get to that question, they already know it's coming. So there's no question about asking it. And I have to admit, everything that I've told you so far in this episode, I am guilty of doing myself. So I recently did a talk in front of around 60 people. Every one of them was a potential client. There was no charge to them. I provided a lot of value. I delivered great content. And within that, I briefly mentioned what I do for work. But I never asked for anything. I never said, if you're interested in becoming a client, you could, or if you'd like more help with this. I never did any of those things. I basically just assumed that they got the value, they know what it is that I do, and if they're interested, they know how to reach me. And they would. Guess what? They don't, unless I reach out to them or if I let them know exactly what I'm looking for, they're not going to do it. So if you think that I am on my high horse during this episode, I am not. I am really talking to myself. In this whole episode, I'm trying to give myself a little pep talk on how to get better at sales. I do the same thing in this podcast. Anna Xavier was a guest of mine on episode 22, and she has a podcast about podcasting. And I remember listening to her podcast. At one point, she made the switch, recognizing that she needs to let listeners know how they could hire her and what her services were. And I remember, wow, that's impressive. I really like it. And then I didn't do it. And it wasn't until her last episode, her podcast is called The Podcast Space. It's a good one. You should check it out. And when I listened to the last one, she did it again and it finally clicked. I'm like, oh, right. I can do that myself. So here it goes. Ready? Most people become managers because they were so good at what they did and what they're trained to do, but they are rarely given the tools they need to become good managers. I'm Jeremy Doran, and that's what I do. I give new managers or growing managers the tools they need to not only be good managers, but to become great leaders. And what that does is it increases productivity at the company, it increases morale, and it reduces turnover, which, as we all know, is incredibly expensive. So if your company could use a better process for getting managers and leaders to that next level, let's talk. Send me an email. I'm at jdoran@neuroconversionleadership.com. We can schedule a 30-minute complimentary consultation. I will, at the very least, be able to help give you some insights. And if at the end of that you think I can help, then I will ask you to hire me. That's my commitment. So how was that? It wasn't too painful, I don't think. It was pretty quick, and I let you know exactly what I do and what I'm looking for. And I look forward to getting that email. So last week and some of this week, we talked about self-promotion within the workplace, which is ultimately sales. And it's just selling yourself instead of selling a product. And then we talked about the actual sales and how some of us have the same fears and obstacles, and talked about a few things that we can all try to overcome them. So largely, it's changing our mindset so that sales is no longer a bad word. I hope you found this episode helpful, and I look forward to receiving your email so that we can schedule a free 30-minute consultation. Have yourselves a great week.